This meeting of the Starkville Board of Aldermen will now come to order. Please rise for the saying of the Pledge of Allegiance, after which Alderman Maynard would like to open us in a word of prayer, and we will observe a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us to come today to do your work, Lord, and to represent this city. Be with us tonight, Lord, and the decisions that we make may be in your guidance, and we represent you well, Lord. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Amen.
All right, you have before you a copy of the written agenda. Are there any proposed changes to the agenda as written?
Mayor, may I be recognized?
You may.
I would like to amend the agenda to reflect that we recess until Thursday, February 12th at 4 o'clock at Renaissance Bank. The purpose of that, one of the agenda items I put on that recess meeting is for this board to discuss the long-range capital improvement projects and other city projects and other city projected needs. That will include drainage issues, city street overlay issues, projected needs and equipment, personnel, facilities, and then for us to have an opportunity in just an individual meeting to discuss realistic funding options, both long range and short range.
All right, so the proposed revision is to change the recess to from as it stands February 16th, 2015 to Thursday, February 12th, 2015 at 4 o'clock at Renaissance Bank. Yeah.
Mayor, I'm a little bit late getting here. Excuse my tardiness. Can you recognize me?
Hold on one second.
Okay, well,
Alderman Maynard, is that your proposed revision?
Yes, sir.
All right. And now, is there any objection?
Mayor, would you recognize me, please?
You are recognized.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, what's on the table, please? I'm trying to get some clarity. Just keep it real simple. No confusion here tonight. Let's get recognized and handle business properly.
On the table is to recess until Thursday, February 12th at 4 o'clock at Renaissance Bank to discuss long-range capital improvement projects, city projected needs.
Okay, gentlemen, that's for consent?
No, sir.
Okay.
An amendment to the agenda.
Okay. He's asked to revise the agenda, and I was asking, is there any objection? Are you entering an objection?
Yeah, before I tell you that, Mayor, let me ask you another question. Gentlemen, why are we, for what purpose are we going to meet on the 12th? Who are we going to listen to? I mean, what business we're going to attend to? Who's going to be there? I mean, in other words, why are we going to meet again before the 17th? I mean, who's going to listen to? Who's going to tell us something? On the 17th, why are we meeting there?
The purpose of the meeting is for us, this Board of Aldermen,
okay,
to discuss long-range capital improvement projects
okay,
and other city projected needs. That will include street overlays, both prioritized and unprioritized, drainage issues, both prioritized and unprioritized, city equipment, including fire and police, city personnel, including fire and police and other personnel needs, sanitation equipment, facilities for the police department, and then discuss with all of those things we have on the table with a limited number of resources, how we intend to fund those both in the short term and the long term.
Okay, my last question before I inform the mayor whether I have an objection. Why are we meeting on that date versus 2 weeks from tonight?
Because it is my feeling that we need a meeting where we have one focus, and it's virtually impossible to do that in a regular set meeting.
Mayor, I have no objection in saying that, I can have one focused meeting at any time. It's just a matter how you apply your attention. So, I have no objection to the agenda matter. Obviously, that's been discussed already, so I have no objection.
And I will tell you, Alderman Maynard and Alderman Little came to me last week, and they recommended that we have several pressing capital projects, and it's time to have a discussion about prioritizing, putting together a capital plan. I envision this as revisiting the discussion that we began in September when Mr. Grubbs visited. I have invited Mr. Grubbs. He is available next Thursday. And I would also ask from each of you, I'll also make this request from the department heads, please submit to me by the end of this week, close business on Friday, any proposed capital improvements that you would like discussed at that meeting. Send me a list of everything you can think of. If you want to limit it, limit it. If you want to include everything but the kitchen sink, include everything but the kitchen sink, and we will use that as a starting point next Thursday.
Mayor, can I recognize one of the inquiries?
You may.
Mayor, why do we have to submit it to you? We're gonna have a meeting on the 12th. What's the significance of submitting it to you when we, the governing body, gonna meet on this? And of course, we know that the police department, as a matter of fact, yes, we need that. The police got to park all over the street and everywhere else, and we've been talking about this going almost a year now. So why do we have to submit these things to you? Do we have to go through you to get it on for these things to be considered?
Alderman, you can bring it to the meeting if you would like. I ask you to submit it to me ahead of time because I would like to, in some form, be able to compile and organize this so that you'll have it before you in an organized manner at the meeting next Thursday. But you may bring it however you like. Is there any objection to Alderman Maynard's revision? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, the agenda has been so revised. Alderman Maynard, do you have further proposed revisions?
No, sir.
Alderman Wynn.
Okay. Under board business, I need to add 2 items. That'd be 10F, and I'm going to add a 10G. 10F is discussion and consideration of changing the agent of record for the health insurance program for the city of Starkville. That would be item F. And item G is the Starkville animal ordinance policy. Maybe we'll go ahead and move that to consent.
Hold on 1 second. Let me get these one at a time. All right, so I have as a proposed revision, add an item F, discussion of changing the agent of record for the Starkville health insurance policy. Is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, you have a proposed revision, item G.
Item G is the Starkville's animal control ordinance. Those are the little flyers that will need to be placed in their electric utility bills.
All right, so your proposal is to authorize placing
The Starkville animal control ordinance flyer in the electric utility bills.
Starkville animal control flyers and electric utility bills. Is your proposal that matter be placed on the consent?
Yes.
All right. Proposed revision is to place a matter which would authorize placing Starkville animal control ordinance flyers in all utility bills and to place that matter on consent. Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on consent. Alderman Wynn, do you have further proposed revision?
No, I do not.
Alderman Little.
Item 10C under board business, I'd like to add that to consent.
All All right, proposed revision is to place item 10C, the discussion and consideration of reforming the Budget and Audit Committee as a committee to include all members of the Starkville Mayor and Board of Aldermen, with Scott Maynard to continue as budget chair on the consent agenda. Alderman Little, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Do I hear any objection?
Mayor, may I recognize?
You may.
Mayor, a couple of things I think it needs to be clear for the record before I agree for this for placement consent. I want to say I have served on the budget committee for a number of years, during my almost 22 years on the board. I just want the record to be real clear that I have no objection to this, but two things I'd like to see happen. I want to say this one thing, that this existing three-member budget committee, in my opinion, given my experiences and seniority on this board, has done a very excellent job. So I want the press and the public to clearly understand that the three-member committee, which consisted of Chairman Maynard, the Alderwoman from 2, Lisa Wynn, and yours truly, the Vice Mayor, in my opinion, has done an excellent job on this. Now, Mr. Mayor, I like the gentleman, before I agree to consent, would you be in agreement to an amendment that we try to have these meetings, since it's going to be involved the full board, during our regular and recess meetings whenever possible? Gentlemen, would you include that in there?
I would be open to it whenever possible. I don't want to be
That's why I use those words, gentlemen. Would you be in agreement to that?
whenever possible.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Mayor, if the gentleman agrees to that language to go in, that the full board will meet as a budget committee on our regular and recess meetings whenever possible, and we incorporate that language in by agreement, then I have no objection for consent.
So Alderman Little, would you like to incorporate that language in your proposed revision?
Whenever possible, that's right.
All right, so the proposed revision would be taking the item as it stands, placing it on consent, and adding to the item on the consent agenda that the committee of the whole will meet during regular and recess meetings of the Starkville Board of Aldermen whenever possible. All right. Alderman Carver, I saw your hand.
That answered my question.
Any objections? Any objections? Any objections? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Little, do you have further proposed revisions? Alderman Walker.
I'd like to move item 11B to I to consent.
Mayor, I object to that going to consent, please.
All right, that matter will remain on the regular agenda. Alderman Walker, do you have further proposed revisions?
No.
Any further proposed revisions by the members of the board? Are there any further proposed revisions to the agenda by the members of the board? Any further proposed revisions? All right, seeing none, a motion to approve the agenda as revised is in order.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Little to approve the agenda as revised. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Little, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No, sir.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. You now have before you the consent agenda for your approval. Is there any objection to the approval of the consent agenda?
Mayor, maybe recognize very briefly.
You may.
Mayor, one thing I want to mention, I'm going to vote to approve the consent agenda. I don't mean to be so talkative here, but these are important things. But one thing I want to mention, I take it that we're going from the three-member committee so that some other the aldermen can attend. Is that correct, Mayor? Is that why we're going from the three members to the full board so some other aldermen can attend?
Well, it was not my proposal, but certainly I could surmise by the proposal, which changes it from a three-member committee to a committee of the whole, that is indeed what we are doing.
Let me ask, gentlemen, I think from three you proposed this.
I did.
What's the purpose of going to this?
No offense to the members that served last year, but I think there were a couple of times when several of us had expressed a desire to attend a meeting, and I think there's an inherent problem when the public can attend, but a member of the board cannot attend one of those meetings.
Yes, sir.
So that's the reason about it.
That's what I was thinking, but Mayor, very brief, but, you know, of course I support this, but I'm hoping that those who want to attend will be in attendance, since we're doing that, and I just say that in very due respect. Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor.
Can I be recognized?
You may.
I would also like to say that I do hope that people can attend whenever they can to be a part of this. I also think that when you are asked to be on a committee, that it is your responsibility to show up. And not all the time has that happened. I know we're in the process of hiring a firm to do a plan, and a person's been on that committee and they've yet to attend any of those meetings. So it is important if you choose to be on this board that you show up whenever it's time for you to show up, and you have your name called whenever it's time for you to have your name called.
All right, is there any objection to the approval of the consent agenda? Any objection, any objection, any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved as revised. You have placed your minutes on the consent agenda, so that will take us to announcements and comments by the mayor and board. And I have several new employees that I'd like to introduce tonight. I'd first like to introduce our 3 newest police officers.
There's only 2 here tonight. Come on.
All right. Who are we missing tonight?
Walker.
Okay.
He's not here.
I'd first like to introduce Harrison Hatcher. Harrison is originally from Columbus, Mississippi, and was homeschooled. Upon completing his high school requirements, Harrison attended East Mississippi Community College and received his associate's degree in liberal arts. After completing his certification as a law enforcement officer, Harrison was a police officer for the Mississippi State University Police Department for 1.5 years. Harrison enjoys shooting, target practice, and spending time with his wife, Hannah. He and his family attend Pine Lake Baptist Church in Starkville. Please join me in welcoming Harrison. It is now my privilege to introduce Gilberto Jimenez, originally from Laredo, Texas. He attended Hamilton High School in Hamilton, Mississippi. He also attended Livingston University in Alabama. Gilberto worked for the Starkville Police Department from 2000 to 2007 before moving to Texas, where he worked at the Dow Company as a boilermaker. Prior to returning to work for SPD, Bert worked for the Aberdeen Police Department for 11 years. Gilberto is the proud father of 2 children, Nicholas and Jacob. He is also one of 13 children. He has 9 brothers and 3 sisters. When time permits, he enjoys woodworking and spending time with his girlfriend, Michelle Allred. Please join me in welcoming Gilberto Jimenez. And finally, I'd like to introduce Michael Walker. Michael is from Aberdeen, Mississippi, and graduated from Aberdeen High School. He attended Itawamba Community College and is a graduate of the University of Phoenix with a degree in business management. Prior to becoming a police officer with the city of Starkville, Michael worked with the Aberdeen Police Department for the last 4.5 years as their training officer and with the K-9 unit. Michael and his wife, Maria, are the proud parents of 2 children, Michael II and Cameron. In his spare time, Michael enjoys football, weightlifting, and spending time with his family. He and his family attend North Montgomery Church of Christ in Starkville. Please join me in welcoming Michael Walker. And it is now my pleasure to introduce our 2 newest firefighters. First, I'd like to introduce Nathan Knepp. Nathan is originally from Macon, Mississippi, and is a graduate of Magnolia Mennonite School. Nathan comes to us as a certified firefighter and EMT. Before joining the Starkville Fire Department, Nathan worked for the Columbus Fire Department for 1.5 years and for air balance engineering testing and balancing HVAC equipment. Nathan is the son of Philip and Mary Knepp. During his spare time, Nathan enjoys hunting. He is an avid airplane enthusiast and gunsmith. Please join me in welcoming Nathan Knepp. It is now my pleasure to introduce Patrick Warner. Patrick is originally from Louisville, Mississippi, and is a graduate of Winston Academy. He attended Mississippi State University, earning a Bachelor of Science degree. Patrick is currently enrolled in the Columbia Southern University, in Columbia Southern University, working toward a master's degree. Patrick also comes to us as a certified firefighter and EMT. Before joining the Starkville Fire Department, Patrick was a crash rescue firefighter for the Air National Guard, Keyfield Fire Department, and worked for Philadelphia, Mississippi Fire Department for 8 years. Patrick and wife Lindsay are the proud parents of one daughter, Bryn. He enjoys sports and is interested in politics. Patrick and his family attend Murphy Creek Baptist Church. Please join me in welcoming Patrick Warner to the City of Starkville. Thank you, gentlemen. And at this time, I am going to yield the floor to Chief Mann, who has a special announcement for us.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not going to take long with this. During an executive session in October of last year, I informed you of my intentions to retire sometime in early 2015. Tonight I'm here to inform you I will be retiring from the city on February 22nd. The first thing I want to do is thank you for allowing me to complete a few projects before making this public. You've known this for quite some time. A lot has come and gone over the 32 years that I've been, 32 and a half years. I've had the privilege to work with a department that transitioned from a combination volunteer full-time of 24 people to a department that's 63 strong. I've had the opportunity to be involved with the city that when I come was a high class 7 fire rating and is now a low class 4, staring at a class 3 fire rating. During this time, I've been a part of some of the worst fires in our city's history. I've been involved in one of the most tragic fires in our city's history. But I've been a part of many good things. The city's growth, growing relations with MSU, new and better fire codes, many others. I can remember when 5 major working fires was common in a week, sometimes in a day. Now we have 5 major working fires in a year. That's average for us. So the codes are working, your department is much better, your department's much stronger. That's not what I did. That's what we did. That's what we as a department, we as a city did over the 32 and a half years that I've been with you. I think the biggest thing that I want to do is to recognize a few people I've worked with that made an impact on me and made my tenure here much easier. I may look at things a little differently. Maybe I'm looking at it wrong, or maybe others are looking at it wrong. I don't know. I really don't care at this point. Because my opinion is mine, and I leave very comfortable with my opinion of working in city government. Being a department head is not easy. I've watched 6 fire chiefs before me struggle to accomplish what they felt was the best approach to run a department. I was no different. Being a department head is not easy, but sitting in my seat and knowing each of you, I know being a mayor and an alderman is not easy. I respect and support you for what you do, and I think the following should be said. To all of you aldermen, thank you. Thank you for shooting straight with me. Thank you for simply being open, honest with me, and discussing things whether you were for or against the item. At least I knew where you stood. Each of you answered your phones when I called, or at least you would text me and return your call later. Thank you for making things easier. For Vice Mayor Perkins, thank you for your support.
Yes, sir. You're welcome, Chief.
As a seasoned veteran on the board, you grilled me several times during my tenure.
Yes, sir.
But you did it very tactfully.
Yes, sir.
You didn't do it as much as you could have, but through it all, I could tell that you supported. You wanted things right, and I agree with you with that. Lastly, I've had the privilege of working with 3 of the most unique people I've ever been around in my life. Former Mayor Dan Camp and former CAO Lynn Sproul, for me, was easy working with them. I know other people maybe think differently, but those were the 2 easiest people I've ever worked with in my life. They held you accountable. They would call your hand in a heartbeat, but at the same time be tremendously supportive. Much like you, Mayor Wiseman, never have I had a supervisor that was as easy to talk to, as accessible, but one that demands only positive thinking. I can only say without a doubt, you're the easiest person I've ever worked with, and that's all a department head can ask. Having said this, and I haven't said enough, but we all knew this was coming, and I've always said change is good. I stand willing to do whatever you need me to do to ease the transition of my position to someone else. Thank you.
Chief, don't go anywhere just yet. Give us an opportunity to give you some comments. I know I've got a couple I want to make of my own. True to form, Chief, that was all class. And you have always been all class. We have, over the last 5.5 years, experienced some extraordinary highs and extraordinary lows. I can remember going to 3 major apartment fire scenes in a month one time with you, one of which was the most tragic fire in our city's history. I have watched you work with board members and business community leaders and developers to make sure that we had the most up-to-date and user-friendly codes possible. One of our most significant achievements over the last 5.5 years has, of course, been having our fire classification upgraded, which you and your predecessors worked diligently for. But through it all, Chief, the thing that sticks out to me the most about your tenure is your temperament, the way you conduct yourself. You are an honest man, and you know, there's no flash. There's no nothing beyond the truth and true professional competence to you. That's what I have experienced, and that's what I know the men and women who serve the fire department have experienced. And I, for one, will miss you greatly.
Thank you.
I'll now open the floor if any board members would like to make comments. Alderman Little.
Chief, I can honestly say it's been a pleasure to work with you the last 1.5 years. I wish I'd known you longer. 32.5 years is a long time. I appreciate your loyalty and dedication and service to the city. 7 years, you rose through the ranks, spent 7 years as chief, and that's quite an impressive accomplishment. And I feel personally that your successor is going to have big shoes to fill. But I just wish you nothing but the best as you enter this next chapter of your life.
Thank you.
Alderman Wynn.
Good evening, Chief Man.
Good evening.
Back in May of 2013, Chief Man, yeah, it's been that long, you were the first department head to call me up and say, Alderman-elect, I want to meet you. We met. Chief Man, thank you for your service. Thank you for your kindness. And I've learned a lot from you. You know what else I learned? If you call and say, Alderman, it's just going to take 5 minutes, 5 minutes actually could lead to an hour or 2 hours in your office. But I want to say thank you, and I wish you nothing but the best, you and your wife, going forward in your retirement. What will you do on your first day off?
I have no earthly idea, but I'll be glad when it gets here.
Well, good luck to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Alderman Carter.
I got one last thing I'll say too. It's just a little bit different from my side, I guess, growing up and running around firehouses. But I've always, coming from this side, I've always appreciated the way you just, I guess it's the temperaments or the way you can make a hard situation. You know, you got a laughter about you that, I mean, it's contagious, and you know that. But I've always enjoyed that side of our conversations, is calling knowing there's going to be a joke or two thrown in. You know, but thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. All right, that concludes my comments. Are there any comments from the members of the board? Alderman Wynn.
I need to recognize 3 people tonight. as aldermen, we receive our copy of the TV PPA News magazine. And Alderman, I hope that you got a chance to kind of thumb through it. And if you did, you saw one of our very own in here. He is a member of the 7 States Power Corporation Board of Directors. He is none other than our own Starkville Electric Department guy, Mr. Terry Kemp himself. Will you please stand, Mr. Kemp? Thank you so much. Here he is in there. I circled you in there. And the second person that I want to recognize, he happens to be the father to this guy that I'm going to recognize, and it is our very own Edward Kemp. Mr. Kemp, will you please stand? Mr. Kemp, our city engineer, we were in Jackson on, I think it was on Wednesday, and we took our Transportation Alternative Program grant to MDOT. Mr. Kemp had done such a great job that the representative there asked him who had put this packet together for him, and he responded by saying yes. And although he's our engineer, I saw a very interesting side of him. He was sitting there selling our city to them, you all, and I had never seen that side of Mr. Kemp because I only see the engineer. So I just want to say thank you for all of your work that you've done. Thank you so much. And the last person that I want to recognize is our very own CAO, Mr. Taylor Adams. I had to learn through the grapevine that he has became the first treasurer for the Institute for Public Procurement and appointed as their treasurer on the NIPGP 2.0 governance model. So Mr. Adams, I want to thank you so much. And in addition to saying that, Mr. Adams joined us last week at MDOT when we went to turn in our grant, and I just thank them for the work that they've done, and Mr. Adams was sitting there selling our city. I say this to Mr. Adams sometime, and I want the board members to know, because plenty of times Mr. Adams is at so many functions when the mayor as well as some of the board members cannot be there. So many functions that we need to be attending, such as the Mississippi Roundup. I want to say he sells our city everywhere he goes. Last Monday night, he is in Jackson and had called up someone to tell them about some property that's vacant here and inviting the guy up here to come see our city. And what I like most about Mr. Adams, he has made a sacrifice and he realizes that he has made a sacrifice. I thank his wife, Phoenix, for sharing you with our city. Phoenix, Taylor, Hudson, Kenzie, and Karis, you make a sacrifice for your city, from your wife and your 4 children. And I want to say this, and I'll go on record and say it. Our city is blessed to have you as our CAO because you are the little one-man show sometimes. And I thank you so much. Mr. Mayor, I yield the floor.
Further comments from the members of the board? Are there any further comments from the members of the board? Any further comments? Seeing none, we'll move to citizen comments. At this time, any citizen wishing to make comments may do so by coming forward, introducing yourself, and you'll be recognized to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes.
I'm Doug Feig. I live at 100 Dunbrook in Timber Cove. That's in Ward 4, at the intersection of Dunbrook and South Montgomery. I come to speak in regard to the heavy traffic on South Montgomery, and more specifically to encourage the board to establish some sort of linkage between the issuing of additional permits for residential construction further south on the road with improvements to the road so that its carrying capacity is increased. I've lived at that residence since 1992. As you can imagine, traffic continues to increase, more traffic each year than the year previous, and yet no significant improvements have been made to the road south of where I live. There have been, of course, some improvements between Academy Road and Loxley Way. And I asked the board to explore the possibility of some sort of way to link the issuing of additional permits for residential construction to improvements to the roadway. We don't continually have more and more cars driving on roughly the same road. I appreciate the fact that for those folks who live well south of where I do, near perhaps Poorhouse Road, and plan to travel to the university, the new university road will take some of the load off South Montgomery. But a lot of folks, of course, don't work at the university. Even university folks have to drive over to Walmart from time to time. And I ask that something be done so that there's some sort of a link, connection between the issuing of permits for more houses, additional developments, and improvements to the roadway so as to increase its carrying capacity.
Thank you, Dr. Fike.
Hello. Good evening, Mayor and Board. I'm Bernita Henderson from Ward 1. I'd like to address an item that will be considered later tonight. The request for a conditional use on the property at 316 Highway
Henderson.
12 West.
If you would like to continue, it's an open forum and you can, but I will ask for comments on that matter
Oh,
if time
okay.
is
You are-
considered.
okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Will I be able to give my information?
You will.
Hello, my name is Kendall Hightower, and my name is Monique Murray. We're here with the Mayor Youth Council, and we'd like to say that we've been working on with the educational group with Mayor Youth, and we're working on forming with the Boys and Girls Club and helping out with the children. And we would like to thank you all for everything that you do for us. We really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, you have now officially participated in your first Board of Aldermen meeting. Yeah, let's give them a hand.
Good evening to the mayor and board, man. Good evening to the mayor and board. My name is Alvin Turner, Ward 7. I would like for you all to pray with my family, self. On the 10th of this month, it'll be 10 years that I was struck by a vehicle. Tore the mirror off, but it didn't break any bone. So 10th of February would be 10 years. That's a long time. So it didn't take me. So undoubtedly, I'm here for a reason. The citizens would like to know it with the construction and everything. Can we go through Lafayette Street? See a lot of construction, see a lot of barricades, but can we go through that street? A lot of concerns. And we, that's this concerns of citizens.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Mr. Kemp, do we have an idea when the Lafayette Street construction project will be finished?
We met with the contractor today. They like a little bit more concrete work from the roadway, and they're tentatively scheduled to do some paving perhaps next week. They are under a similar sense of urgency as we are to the road. They want to open the road as quickly as possible. So I'm hopeful that maybe if weather permits, maybe by the end of next week, we'll have a record. That of course is subject to a lot of things that are out of our control. But we are keeping regular updates with them.
Thank you, Mr. Kemp. Are there any further citizen comments?
Your Honor, Mayor and Board of Aldermen, I'm Julie Brown, downtown Julie Brown. I'm on the corner of Main and Lafayette, and I'm here in my capacity as the president of the Board of Directors of the Main Street Association, the Downtown Business Association, and I put in my comments about the upcoming, on your agenda, the lease to the Main Street Association, or Downtown Business Association, of the fire station park, and wanted to encourage that that you approve that, in main part because a few years ago we had a charrette to try to see how we could improve our downtown, and if you look at it now, what's happening now is almost like a renaissance. It's wonderful with the side streets and not just the main street. But part of the charrette was to pull College Park and Russell Street and the Cotton District and downtown, kind of a big triangle area where we could all feed on each other, both retail and professionally. And part of that was we needed a green space, and we lacked one. And so we looked at the map and we said, well, we have one. It's the fire station park, but it's completely underutilized. No one's fault, but part of it, I think, is the fencing and just the placement of. So anyway, the partnership and the Main Street Association was able to get a grant, and we have now got an entrance from University Drive to that park. So that helps pull Russell Street and University Drive together. And so the lease of that park would allow us to move the community market
from a privately owned place to a place that's much more open, it's green, there's more parking, and of course with the Renaissance Bank building, that improvement is lovely. We would be able to use that in conjunction with maybe the symphony, the arts. There's a lot of beautiful community things we could promote downtown, and that we promote already, and we'd have a place to do that. So I'm here to encourage you to please vote yes on that lease agreement and allow us to use that park to its greatest potential. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Do we have any further citizen comments? Any further citizen comments? Any further citizen comments? All right, seeing none, we'll move to public appearances, and you have 2 public appearances scheduled tonight. The first is the annual report for municipal court. I see we have our judge, our prosecutor, and our municipal court clerk here with us tonight, and our court administrator.
Board and Mayor, thank you for setting aside this time for us to present our annual report. I'm going to make a few brief remarks before while Mr. Rook is setting up the presentation for you. I wanted just to ask our head clerk, Ms. Shalonda Sykes, and our prosecutor, Ms. Caroline Moore, to come with us once again, because these are the people that work behind the scenes along with all our other clerks that we have, which are too many to bring up here. They're the ones that work behind the scenes that make the Starkville Municipal Court, which I believe, and I think Mr. Perkins would agree with me, a municipal court that sets the standard for the state of Mississippi. There's not a finer one. There's not one that's more well-run than this one. You have something here that you can be proud of. Your own Alderman here can tell you, he's been to other courts, and we hear it all over the state. And it's continued on. I wanted these people, you to see them, because they're the people that make it, not me, but these people and the clerks that work from this side. So thank you for, and you as well, allowing us and giving us the opportunity and the means to be successful and have an exemplary court. I also wanted to thank the Chief, who has been a pleasure to work with. Anything he and I sit down and talk, we don't have problems. We have solutions. Chief and I have worked together on a couple of things. He's been more than willing to help me in anything that makes our court run easier. One of the things, I'll give you an example, is the work program that you have authorized. Since the Chief came on, the work program is 3 times as big as it was. We've got 10 people working down at the sanitation now. We've got people at the park. And this is all thanks to the Chief and his officers who supervise, which allows us to let people help the city who otherwise can't help themselves. So again, I thank you for allowing us to do that. And Chief, I want to recognize you and Officer Wilson and all the other officers who helped. We can't do it without you. Thanks for everything. Thanks for working with me and making my job.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I appreciate it. I want to say just a couple of things about the statistics. I'm going to let Mr. Rook go into more detail about them. You'll see when you look at the statistics that the total new cases have gone up about 400 cases. That's kind of deceiving. And the reason why I say that is because these are mostly due to violations of probations. That people have to come, they're counted as misdemeanors in your statistics, but these are people that are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're not satisfying the obligations they have to the citizens of the city of Starkville, and they're having to be brought back before me by the probation officer for those reasons. So technically they are new cases on your report, but it's deceiving in the sense that they're not new cases. These are people that are coming back before me. It makes up 30% of our misdemeanors. So I wanted to let you know that. The other thing that sticks out is that the felonies have gone up a large amount. That's been one of the largest increases that we have noticed from last year to this year. Additionally, we've noticed, and the statistics will show it, Mr. Rook can show it to you, but the number of thefts in this city has increased substantially. And it's getting to be, and I've used the term epidemic in this town as far as theft crimes. And we're doing everything we can under the law to protect the merchants But those are the things that we've noticed from last year to this year that you'll see we think are different from last year to this year. Our case count is still significantly less than it was at the peak year when I was a judge in 2011 and 2012. We're still, several thousand less. But as I say, we're going back up the number of cases for 2014. So I will turn it over to Mr. Rook and let him go through the presentation for you. And at the end, I'll be glad to answer anything that I can for you. And Mr. Rook will be able to answer anything as well regarding these statistics.
Thank you, Your Honor. What we have here is a bar chart showing the number of traffic citations issued in 2014. And we compare this to the last 5 years to give you an overall picture. And you can see we had a little over 8,800 traffic citations issued, which was up just slightly from the previous year. DUI arrests, we saw 389 DUIs, which again was up just slightly compared to 2013. These are some of the misdemeanors that the judge was talking about. We had 1,423 misdemeanors, which is substantially higher than 2013. And of course, these are the felonies. Now, we did have a decrease last year, but we did have a substantial increase this year, comparatively speaking. Our total cases right here, we compared to the last 10 years, so you can see we were up just a hair, but overall, we are lower than the peak years, but we're still pretty high overall. And I have some additional charts that will provide a more detailed analysis of our caseload. And to give you an example, you'll see a bar chart here for traffic citations. On the left-hand side, you see some of our more common categories of traffic citations. And down here at the bottom, you'll see a pie chart, and that tells you the percentage of each one of these categories. For example, no proof of insurance, 2,198 citations. No seatbelt and no child restraint, 1,984. And you can see that those two categories comprise of close to 50% of the traffic citations. We do have another category, and you can see speeding comprises of 14% of our traffic citation caseload. And then we have no or a suspended driver's license, running a red light, and a stop sign, and then of course there's DUI. Now, the numbers change sometimes within these categories. However, these top three categories have consistently remained the same top three categories for the last several years. And if we take a look at misdemeanors, overall we had a 24% increase from the previous year. And you can see that increase is attributed primarily to these violations of probation that the judge talked about. And these are cases where people have been convicted of crimes, placed on probation, and while they're placed on probation, they violate the terms and conditions of that probation. You can see we had 430 cases. We spend a large amount of time there since they comprise of 13% of our misdemeanor caseload. Now, alcohol-related cases, 18% of our caseload. Drug-related cases, disturbing the peace, disorderly conduct, and misdemeanor theft all comprise of 13% in each category of our misdemeanors. Now, the only surprise here, these are the thefts that Judge Faber was speaking about. In 2013, we had a total of 85 cases. These are all, probably 95% are shoplifting at Walmart. So in 1 year, we've gone from 85 cases to 180 cases. They more than doubled in 1 year. Again, these top three categories are the same consistent top three categories from year to year. Now let's take a look at felonies. Again, we had a very large increase compared to last year. Theft, burglaries, and robberies. This includes any type of auto burglary, burglary of a residence, simple robbery, armed robbery. We saw 69 cases. That was a 67% increase compared to the previous year. Aggravated assault. Assault with means likely to produce death or serious bodily injury, such as shooting someone, stabbing someone, assault on a law enforcement officer. We saw 57 cases last year. That was an increase of 90% compared to the previous year. Drug-related felonies, that's predominantly possession of cocaine. We saw 47 new cases last year. That's an increase of 23%. DUI, felony, that's the third offense or more within 5 years. We saw 15 of those cases. We saw 13 white-collar crime cases. At this time, we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Yes, sir.
In looking at these numbers, Mr. Rook, do you know how they compare to cities around us?
No, sir.
Percentage-wise?
Mayor, may I be recognized?
Alderman Perkins.
Thank you, Mayor. It is very imperative that I say that our honorable municipal judge for the city of Starkville is doing an excellent job. He and his staff are providing exemplary services to our city. They serve with class, honor, and distinction. That is very important in fulfilling the duties of a court. Judge Favor served as city attorney during the 05-09 term, and of course he's a very excellent lawyer. We're very fortunate to have Mr. Rook. I remember when he came on as court administrator. We got our prosecutor. Very fortunately, the last term we hired her, and of course I was familiar with her service before she came here. She was a very outstanding prosecutor before she arrived here to the city of Starkville. So I was already familiar with her background. And last but not least, our honorable clerk of the municipal court is doing a very exemplary job. So it's good to have people who set high marks and high standards. And I choose my words very carefully, and I mean everything that I say. And as Judge Favor said, and being in other courts throughout the state, they are doing an exemplary job, and we are proud to have them in the positions in which we have them in. So I just want to say to them collectively and individually, congratulations, and keep up the excellent work.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Alderman Maynard, to further explain my answer to you when I answered no, the reason I have not compared these or cannot compare these to other cities is because I try, and they don't do this. They don't have these charts and graphs, and they can't give me the numbers, which is surprising to me, but that's why we don't know.
That's what I have to tell them. Nowhere else in the state.
May I be recognized?
You may.
I asked you this last year, I'll ask you again. Is there anything that this board can do to help make your job easier or more efficient?
Well, you have provided quality, talented people who work with me that makes my job easy. You hired a police chief who makes my job easy, works all he does. All he wants to do is help. So we are so happy to have what we have. You, as a board, are familiar with some of the limitations we have regarding storage and all those things. You've addressed those things. We've got a beautiful new facility that you've already building over here for us to move into, which I've toured, which is going to be one of the nicest ones in the state. So off the top of my head, Mr. Rook will have some things because he deals with the day-to-day, but as far as me being the judge, you have provided me ample things that I need to perform my job. But Mr. Rook is a day-to-day person, so he's the better person to ask for me. But thank you for everything that you have provided.
May I answer that? Electronic filing, we desperately need it. You deal with thousands of cases a year. I can't explain the increase in efficiency. Ms. Sykes is well aware. So.
But you have provided us storage space over there, but as you know, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, you are all aware of all this. We're rapidly running out of storage space for these files because it's not like going to an accountant where you can just purge the files after 7 years. We have to keep them. I mean, we get requests, Ms. Sykes gets requests for expungement coming in here from, we had to look up a case from, she had to look up a case from 1995 the other day. So it's not like we can just purge these files. So I guess that's our biggest need. But, you know, it's been addressed, but if we could ever get to that electronic filing, that would significantly help us. But I know it's a substantial amount of money that it costs. We just make the best we can till we have the funds to do that.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for what you did.
We can be excused.
You may be excused. Our final public appearance this evening is Miss Lori Burton on behalf of the Starkville Area Arts Council. And Miss Burton, you will have 10 minutes.
Thank you. And I brought some speakers with me, and I also brought some brand new festival, Cotton District Arts Festival, items for you to share with you. Thank you.
That's right, we come there and give, so y'all be careful. There's an ask here. Before we get started, I just want to thank y'all for the opportunity to come before y'all tonight as the Starkville Area Arts Council. We also want to thank you for your continued support that you give us year in and year out in our mission to further the arts in Starkville and Ottavia County. And we also want to thank you guys and for our past administration for your commitment to the downtown area with the City Hall complex, keeping the police department downtown. We know that having an environment downtown is an important part of what we want to do in the future. And we know that keeping people and jobs downtown is an important part of that. So we just want to say thank you to y'all's commitment to that. My name is John Turner. I'm on the board of the Starkville Area Arts Council. With me, of course, is Lori Burton. Our city president, Jennifer Breakneck, is also on the board. Emily Cravens is our president-elect. We've got some other folks here supporting us tonight. Quality of life is a phrase that you guys have heard over and over again. I know anybody that was at the partnership banquet the other night heard Richard Hilton talk a lot about quality of life. It's something that we know is going to be a key factor in any economic development that we do here in Starkville and we do as a region with Lowndes County and Clay County. We know we might not get the Yokohamas or the PACCARs here within our city limits or within the county, but what we can do is get the folks that run those plants, the executives there, to choose Starkville as their home and where they want to raise their families, and I think that's an admirable goal. The other thing that we know that we can do is we're going to be looking to bring in startup companies, those leading edge companies here, as we try to start up our incubator. And in doing that, we won't just be competing with communities in our area. We'll be competing with areas like Austin, Texas, and Madison, Wisconsin, and Gainesville, Florida, and those places. So we know we have a challenge ahead of us to become an area that attracts those kind of people. They want to live in Starkville over any of these other places that they could choose. How do we do that? Well, one of the ways that a community does that is by enhancing its cultural lifestyle, by providing museums, libraries, sporting events, all of these things. And it's something that Starkville does well, but we think it's something that maybe with all of our help we could do better. I think all of you are pretty familiar with Bill Fruth and his micropolitan rankings. I know that's probably been brought before you guys plenty of times. We know that there's at least 4 Mississippi cities in the top 50, Oxford, Tupelo, Columbus, and Laurel. And where's Starkville? Well, I know y'all know we're 195th on that list. I know we believe we should be right up there in the top with everybody else, but we're not. I know there's a lot of reasons why not, but as an arts organization, we think there's one thing that those communities have that we don't, and that's a centralized downtown arts center. Columbus has the Rosenweig Arts Center, Oxford has the Powerhouse Arts Center, Tupelo has the Gumtree Museum, Laurel has the Lauren Rogers Museum of Art, and those are places where people can come in a central environment and really see what a community has to offer. Arts classes, workshops, events, a place for artists to sell their work, It's a stronger and visual presence in the community, and it's a hub of creativity. And in our area, even West Point, thanks to a generous donation from someone over there, has a brand new art center. And if y'all haven't been there, I suggest y'all go by and look at it, because it is a really, really neat facility. You know, we've got award-winning art programs in our schools, but we don't have anywhere to show that art off. We've got plenty of artists, musicians, writers in our general area. And we don't have a centralized location for them to come and show the public what they do and what they can do. We host award-winning events like the Cotton District Arts Festival every year, but we don't even, as an arts council, have a place to store all of the things that we need to put that on. We have to rent a storage center, and we have to cage storage from the banks and whatnot, so it's difficult for us sometimes. And as a nonprofit, you know, our fundraising is our lifeblood. So we're out there all the time beating the streets trying to get money in, and we don't even have a venue to hold those fundraising events. So kind of chasing our tail, we have to pay places to fundraise. So part of the fundraising that we do goes back to the room that we had to rent to hold the fundraiser. So instead of being able to take that money and plug it back into the programs that we provide, we have to do it on things like that, and obviously a building would help us out in those. So we respectfully submit that Starkville needs a downtown arts center. Our mission since our inception in 1997 is to promote the essential value of the arts for the cultural, educational, social, ethnic, and economic vitality of the greater Starkville area. And we do all that as a volunteer group. And we're responsible for such events as the Everything Home and Garden Expo coming up next month, Forks and Corks, our annual Arts Gala, and especially the Cotton District Arts Festival, which has become Starkville's signature festival. And it brings in hundreds of thousands of dollars each year to the region every April. We've sent y'all reports. We had a report done this year that kind of looks at and quantifies what the impact of that festival is. And we're proud to do it. We're happy to do it. And we also show our commitment to the community by giving annual grants and scholarships totaling over $30,000 every year. We support other organizations like the MSU Starkville Symphony, the Starkville Community Theater, the Knoxville Refuge Artists and Residence Program, the Magnolia Film Festival, and many, many more. We provide art education. We did last year to over 100 students at the Boys and Girls Club. We initiated the Octavie County Barn Quilt Trail. We partnered with Unity and Community to help students ease the transition in the upcoming school consolidation. As I said, grants are a big part of our lifeblood, but we also find ourselves in a catch-22 because a lot of the large grants are predicated on us having a building, because they see having an arts center as showing our commitment to the downtown or to our community for the long term. So, in fact, we just lost out on a $500,000, what's it called, the Art Place grant, due in large part to the fact that we don't have a building. Oxford got invited to apply to the next round because they've got their power source building. We did not, because we don't have a building. So you can see the catch-22. We need a building to raise money to get a building, and we don't have that. And having a building would also allow us to have some space where we can generate some income on our own. I talked about some of the things that we do each year, and really the most amazing thing is that we do it out of a 12 by 14 office over at Partnership Suites, okay? And of course, we know that we can do a whole lot more if we had the space, if we had the place to do some of these things. We could help the community create a vibrant and stronger art scene if we had a building, and we can't do it alone. So here comes the ask. We need help in reaching our goal to get a downtown building. We've done some prep work, and if you could see it in your hearts to give us somewhere between $250,000 to $500,000 to help get us started, that'd be terrific. If you have land you could donate for us, if you have a building you could give to us to get us started, we would appreciate that. In fact, we appreciate any help you could give us to sort of see this happen. And you can kind of see what we do. We have $100,000 in our building fund, and we are very diligent about putting money in there. But as you can see, in order to do the things that we do on a regular basis, most of the money that we raise gets put right back into the programs and other things. So anything we all could do to help us, we would very much appreciate it. In the end, it's all about quality of life. And what we're asking you guys is to help us help you make Starkville a better place, be that place of choice, be that quality of life destination for folks in the future. I appreciate your time. If you have any questions or comments, we'll be glad to entertain.
Are there any questions or comments from the members of the board? Any questions or comments? Alderman Mader.
how big a building are you perceiving you would need square footage wise?
We're not greedy. We will take whatever we can get. Obviously, we would prefer as big as possible, but, you know, we make do with that tiny room we're in right now, so anything we could start with and do a good job with.
And you mentioned downtown. Would the building necessarily have to be a downtown building?
We would like to be in the downtown area, as Julie Brown pointed out. I think that's an important part of what we do. If you're not downtown, if you're not bringing those events down, and you don't have a center court downtown, you're kind of defeating the purpose. So yes, we are pursuing having something downtown in the downtown area.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments from the members of the board?
And thank you for your time, and thank you all for our caps.
Thank you. And again, thank you we know you support us a lot. We know this is a big ask. We appreciate y'all considering it.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for what you do. All right, the next matter that you have before you is a second public hearing on potential changes to the Park and Recreation Ordinance as revised by the City Attorney. And at this time, I'm going to recognize the City Attorney. He would like to recommend one additional change to make sure that the intent of the board in modifying this ordinance is clear.
Thank you, Mayor. Board members, in reading over this one more time before tonight, I want to tweak two words. They appear in section 2, and I want to strike the word "an oversight." The sentence is to provide for an oversight body. After that striking, it will be to provide for a body. Again, just to eliminate any ambiguity about the intent of this ordinance being to make the Park Commission advisory rather than autonomous. And that would not necessitate a third public hearing, and the board could act on that tonight if it so chooses.
All right, I will introduce the matter. This is a proposed ordinance revision that would change the Parks Commission from an autonomous body with sole management and oversight authority of the city parks to an advisory body. State law provides the city the option to organize parks under an autonomous commission or to organize parks as a city department. Parks would be organized in the aftermath of this ordinance revision as a city department from now until July 1st, while under the current 2% legislation, parks would still have responsibilities to approve 2% expenditures and the resolution that you have approved asking for the extension of the 2% tax does ask for the latitude for the city to be able to make 2% expenditures for parks. So in the future, that's a function, hopefully, that parks would not have to continue to engage in. Questions or comments from the members of the board? Alderman Carver.
So the Park Commission, as it sits now, would be an advisory committee until July the 1st, 2015?
Yeah, they would be advisory, from here until you adopted an ordinance that said they weren't advisory. The period from now until July 1st is significant because you're still under the current 2% legislation, and under that, which is state law, Parks needs to approve 2% expenditures. So it allows for that. And then once the 2% tax is extended, presumably giving the city authority to make parks expenditures, that would no longer be a responsibility of the Parks Advisory Commission in the future. Alderman Little.
Mr. City Attorney, could you expand on that a little further if this passes tonight as far as the Parks Commission's capacity, as far as autonomy, and how long it could extend under the law?
State statute, this ordinance would go into effect. The language in the statute is 1 month after its passage. So if it passed tonight and the board were to approve the minutes of this meeting on March 3rd, the first meeting in March, that's when it would go into effect. And so the commission would remain autonomous from tonight through March 3rd and would come advisory after the meeting on March 3rd.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Any further questions or comments? Any further questions or comments? Alderman Carter.
The suggested motion would cover everything up to the July 1st, and then the new legislation that's taken for the 10-year period as well?
That's actually written into the legislation. You've got it you've got the July 1st period broken out, don't you?
Correct.
Yeah, it's written into the ordinance, excuse me, so it would automatically roll forward.
Mayor, it's in section 7A.
Would you like to read that section?
Read in its entirety. The Park Commission shall serve in an advisory capacity to the governing authority. The Park Commissioner shall not manage and control the parks, playgrounds, and swimming pools maintained and established in the city, but rather advise the governing authority on issues related thereto. Notwithstanding the foregoing, the Park Commission shall administer the 2% money received from the levy of the restaurant sales tax through June 30, 2015, after which the city shall administer the 2% funds. So they will administer them through June 30, 2015, but after which the city will do it. So come July 1, 2015, the city will do it. Yes, sir.
Any further questions or comments from the members of the board? Any further questions or comments? Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll now hear any public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on the proposed ordinance revision may do so by coming forward, introducing yourself, and you will be recognized to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes.
Greetings to me and board. My name is Alvin Turner, and we have 2 lawyers, so it'll be a big help. People take parks to do crimes like rape and all that stuff. We would hope that maybe we could get some surveillance at these parks to try to help people that want to have a fun time turn to tragedy. Also, we know that they have this open weapon law from Jackson. We need to understand that a little bit more, because as we know, we don't need Billy Bob to get a weapon that don't need a weapon and do wrong.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Further citizen comments, or further comments on the proposed ordinance revision?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Board. My name is Andrew Martin. I'm a constituent of Mr. Little. I emailed Mr. Little and Mr. Maynard earlier this week, maybe 2 weeks ago. I'm here representing the Starkville Soccer Association, as well as a parent who has 3 young children that play all the sports in the community. So I understand what the parks, baseball, softball, everything looks like. So I'm not just here for Starkville Soccer Association particularly, but I want to tell you our experience with the commission, with Starkville Soccer Association. First of all, it's been somewhat of a struggle, and I'm not confused about the fact that parks is more than softball, basketball, and baseball, and football. I know it's about, you know, the swimming pools and the parks in general and the playground equipment. But this has been my experience with it, and dealing with the park commission has been somewhat of a nightmare in the past couple of years. I understand what the intent of it was, and I appreciate what they've done in the past. The list is long. These fields are certainly better than what I grew up on here. I grew up here, so, but they're 20 years old now. And I believe if you're going to look at the Park Commission and rework it, perhaps modify it, there are about 3 things that I would just like to suggest to you guys. And the first one is, I think one of the biggest problem is nobody on the commission up until this year has had a kid playing sports. Now, again, I know it's not all about sports and the ball fields, but I would argue that over 75% of the stakeholders are kids in our community that go to these parks. I just think being plugged in, being at the fields every night, seeing exposed wires and holes in the ground and all the problems that exist at the park that members of the commission, it's no fault of theirs, they don't see because they're not out there on a daily basis. So that's my first suggestion is to form it with people that are out there on a daily basis. The second thing is the 7-year term is extremely too long, much too long. For one thing, it promotes complacency, if you will, or boredom, a loss of energy. Secondly, it might prohibit someone who's interested in bringing some energy to the commission. It might prohibit them from even thinking about it because it's a 7-year term, and that's a long time. I think we can look at our Congress of the United States now, but that'd take more than 3 minutes to talk about that. So, finally, is the autonomy, which we talked about here today. I think, particularly them being autonomous, sometimes it dies when it goes to the commission, and you guys never hear what's really going out there with your parks. I'm not going to make this a bashing session. I don't want to, because they've done probably more good than they have bad over the past few years, but they just become kind of stale and stagnant. And we've been met with a lot of resistance trying to get things funded through the association. And we are particularly interested in that because we feel like we contribute to the 2%. Just this past weekend, we had a tournament that brought in over 3,000 people that had to stay in our hotels for 2 nights and eat at our restaurants all weekend long. So I can assure you we raised north of $250,000 just on a weekend tournament. So we believe we contributed that 2%, and now we're looking at a double in the fees next year. So all we're wanting is a little help from the commission, which we hadn't gotten very far in the past couple of years. I'm out of time on it.
Yep.
I tend to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Thanks.
Further comments on the proposed ordinance revision? Any further comments on the proposed ordinance revision? Are there any further comments? All right.
Mr. Martin, I'd like to say thank you for your comments. I agree with everything you said, and that was one of my missions last year, was to be sure we had an appointment. We had somebody that's going to have skin in the game in District 3. I know several of those members have been there for a long time, and I thank them all for their service. But like, as you say, 7 years is a long time, and kids grow up. Mine are in the process of growing up. I'm not out there near as much as I have been, but there's several issues that need to be addressed out there, and I want to thank Mr. Kemp also. Mr. Kemp, Friday, when I heard early that morning that we were going to have about 70 teams coming in from one of the parents whose husband is also on the SSA board for scrambling to get the parking lot lights. We had 2 lights burning out of 14 on that back stretch where the shuttle service, the Smart Transit goes around for months. I thank you for getting out there and getting that taken care of. I understand you've got several other bulbs and parts taken care of, ordered. They may have came in recently. It was about a 2-week deal, and I've been out there trying to explain to parents and the refs fussing and people from out of town, and on last Thursday night, fussing about the lights. When you look up and you got half the lights working on the field, and it's dark spots, and I got a kid out there playing. And I appreciate you guys getting out there and taking care of that. There's a lot of issues. This is an area that's really important to me, and I think everybody's kids are important. You've got young kids, Mayor's got young kids, and we've got to do this right. We've got to get a task force, a committee, I've already had 3 or 4 folks come forward and say, hey, I want to serve on whatever committee we can to get this done right. We need some long-term plans, short-term goals, where are deficiencies, and work to, where do we want to be in 10, 15 years, 20 years down the road. And we need to get it right. We're not, just like my counterpart said last time we were here, we can't just take it over and say, hey, it's all going to be better. We're running it. We can't sit here and point and say, well, they're autonomous. That's y'all's problem. It's the face of the city. If those folks come in from Madison like they've been and say, what's the deal? That's what they see and they go home and talk about. They can't even keep the light bulbs changed up there at the parks. That's pretty straightforward and simple in my mind. And I hate it I've had to be so involved the last couple of weeks on that. Thank you. Didn't mean to vent, but that's the way I feel.
Any further? Alderman Walker.
Again, thank you for the comments, and I agree with what Alderman Little had to say. I think us making this change and taking over the parks, I think we all recognize we have issues there. And just by us taking over this park, those issues aren't going to immediately go away. But I think that as we move forward, if we have a plan, and it is going to take a serious plan with serious people that can come in and help us really evaluate where some of the problems at the parks are, and how we can fix them going forward. To your point on the term limit, in the current, Mr. Attorney, is 7 members, likely 1 per ward. respectively that will make up that commission. Could you tell us what state statute says there?
It says the terms shall be as long as the numbers of people on the committee. So if there's a 7-member commission, the term would be 7 years. Section 4 references that state code section. So if the board has an intent to change the term limit, tonight would be the night to change that limit in Section 4.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's something that certainly I would consider trying to address. 7 years that's a pretty long time. 4 sometimes sounds like a long time too. So absolutely. So I think that's something that we can do. But I think it is in everybody's interest here to try to look at how do we make the parks better and put us in a position to go compete. Thank you, and the SSA and the SBA and all the other people involved, and William, you at the parks, and everybody for contributing. And what we have to do is find a way to work together as a team to pull us forward. But same thing, you know, I'm a user of the parks. My kids are users of the parks, but I also get to go with my kids and use other parks in other communities. And when you go see those communities, sometimes it can be a little frustrating to see why they have it and we don't, and we're in a position where we ought to be able to make that. We ought to be able to make that happen. Great tournament this weekend. The weather held out for you, and that's great for our local economy, is to come in and have tournaments to do that. But if we want to compete, with the Tupelos and the Oxfords and the Madisons and Ridgeland and you name it, we're going to have some serious upgrades. I got an email just today before I came to the board meeting, essentially stating emphatically that we have to do something out there, that this volunteer person who's helping coordinate this event was working in the restrooms, cleaning them out, constantly out there when we have problems over the weekends when we have tournaments. We have to get to the point where that's not an every weekend situation. We have to find a way to improve this. And I am going to, I think tonight we need to, if this is approved, we do need to approve the establishment of some type of committee, begin to look at a task force over these next several months where we can look to identify how we might address moving the parks forward to understanding operationally, from a sports programming standpoint to landscape management. We have to have people that can come in and tell us where we are and how do we need to change things so they're going to be better. And so I look forward to having that discussion with the other aldermen and the public. So thank you, and thank everybody for the hard work you put in. Now it's going to be time to roll up the sleeves and do a little bit more hard work so we can figure out how do we move us forward.
Are there any further concluding comments in the public hearing? Any further concluding comments from the members of the board?
Mayor,
Alderman
I
Mayor.
want to clarify. City Attorney, are you stating if we wanted to limit those terms, we would need to do that tonight? Otherwise, it would be another change in the ordinance later, and we'd have to go through 2 additional public hearings.
That's correct.
Any further? Alderman Carver.
If Alderman Perkins is done, or Alderman Maynard's done, I agree with the gentleman from Ward 4. For me to vote tonight, it's got to be establishment of a task force or committee, and I think representation from each ward, or maybe an appointment from each ward or something like that, would be a proper way to conduct that. And also term limits of about 3 to 4 years. 3 is my preference, 4 is the tops. I don't want to see any term. I think that's general operating procedure in government, probably 4 years. This being a different body, probably 3. And so for my vote tonight, I'd have to have those 2 prerequisites: establishment of a committee and a term limit of 3 years. I'd like to see that added, whoever makes the motion.
I will say, when it comes to the creation of a task force, I think one of the critical elements that it needs is input from the youth sports organizations. And I don't know if you go strictly by ward, if you're going to get that. So that's something I'd like to be considered as you look into creating a task force.
Maybe I worded that wrong. There's 2 ways to do it. 1 is ward representation, and 2, so we've already got commissioners that are going to be advisory. I've kind of wanted to bring in some, great point. That's what I was saying. Maybe some experts in the field, and if it was a ward, I don't know if it's ever been done before, but a ward appointee, so each alderman has a chance to go and find somebody that's an expert in the field, or it's a previous you know, director, we've got a lot of people here that are retiring from other places. Maybe they've worked in Parks and Rec in some of these other cities if the board feels like that, but maybe an appointee from each ward that, I've got 2 or 3 people in mind that I know, this is what they made a career out of, and so, you know, they're constantly throwing ideas at me, and it's, you know, that's another way to fill those seats, you know, as an appointee from each ward versus a ward-specific individual. Because I feel like we've kind of already accomplished that with the commissioners, in a way.
Yeah, and there are certainly other interests beyond the youth sports organizations, but they are heavy users of the parks, and they have the benefit of being organized. So I would recommend in whatever manner you go about doing it, you ensure that you get at least an invitation for representation from each of those organizations. Alderman Little.
I agree. I think we need to have it open to some degree. We've got senior citizens that use the facilities, not just our youth, and we definitely need to include the SSA director and the SBA directors and other people in those capacities, because they've all got a lot to bring to the table.
Yeah, and maybe rather than hashing through all of it at the table, the director of parks, Mr. Peters, would be an excellent resource in brainstorming. Either I could suggest a couple of approaches on this. If you are comfortable, I can sit down with Mr. Peters and we can brainstorm some interests, and I can talk to you. Or if you are not comfortable with that approach, perhaps name a committee of the board to have that conversation and come back at the next meeting formulating a task force. But I don't know if we're going to get the best outcome, while this is a healthy discussion, figuring it out at the table tonight.
Mr. Mayor, I recognize.
Alderman Perkins.
Yeah, I think I was a little late getting in here tonight. I think the board's going to recess until next week. I think the 12th or whatever date they set. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I think the best thing to do to make sure that there's no error committed with this, since it's such an important matter, just table this matter until the next meeting so you can have the correct language, because you don't want an error with this. And so the board's going to be meeting next week. It's going to be a recess meeting. Just put it on the agenda and we can take it up. So therefore, you have time to think about it, opposed to having to rush to judgment and getting, because you may make an error with it. So that's just my suggestion.
Mr. Mayor, may I be recognized?
You may.
The only point I would make is that the motion for the task force, I would think, would be separate and distinct from the motion on the ordinance. So the board could act on the ordinance tonight, or push it and act on the ordinance on the 12th. But as far as the task force, that would absolutely be appropriate for the 12th, since it's a new concept that hadn't been in the public hearing the last 2 times.
I would recommend pushing forward on the ordinance tonight. You've got a 30-day period before the ordinance can go into effect, and right now everybody is waiting for the effect of the new structure. I would say unless there is some major reason not to move forward, I haven't heard anybody question the need to make the move from autonomous to advisory. I would go ahead and start the clock on that officially happening.
Mr. Mayor, I have no objection. Please understand that there have been some different suggestions about the gentleman from 1, 3, and 4 about the terms. Of course, it's up to the board. Now, I'm just saying if you want to be really careful how you craft that language, because I think the attorney may want to look at it, make sure it carry out its intent. But whatever is the will of the board, I'm supportive of this because I was never in favor of going autonomous in the first place. But I'm just saying that we're only going to be meeting next week. But if this board's ready to move forward, and of course, I'm not trying to hold this up or delay it. I mean, I'm clearly for this, but we want to make sure that the attorney has enough time to make sure that language is drafted carefully and carry out its intent. But if the board already know the terms as to what it wants to do, then it can proceed forward. It's up to the board. But now, but there's some different schools of thoughts. We don't need to sit here, well, let's go with this or that. But it's whatever's the will of the board. I just want to pass that wisdom out. So I'm going to be in favor of the advisory commission. So, but whatever the board decides to do.
Alderman Carver.
I'm sitting here I could talk for 30 minutes of what's going on. I'm trying to think of who would be, ways to structure the term limits versus, I would also like to table this just to give me a couple of days to think about it, because as this discussion we've had tonight, as it's blossoming, there's also some other things I want to think about, and I don't want to make a quick decision tonight. I think the board as a whole wants to make this decision. I feel pretty confident where we're going to go with it, but I do also, if y'all don't mind, just would like to table it, and since we're coming back on the 12th, and we'll finalize it that night, and then we can, if we got a little more time that night, we can discuss it in length.
And we will be at Renaissance Bank on the 12th. So
what would that matter? I mean,
it's going to be a smaller room. If you're going to go full-blown public hearing and go all the way through that, it presents some logistical issues that you don't have here. Alderman Little.
What kind of issue does it present us continuing to delay getting this down to the Capitol? I know those guys.
Well, we've got the resolution. The resolution you put on consent, so that speaks officially to you asking the legislature for the flexibility for it to be a city department. So I don't think that's an issue. You know, the only effect, and it's certainly not something that is a disastrous effect, is you've got the Parks Commission that is in a bit of a holding pattern now, waiting to see what the role is going to be. It pushes that back a little bit. You're looking mid-March, early April before the official transfer in the capacity of the commission. All right, we're still in the public hearing, so let's close the public hearing out, and then let's officially go into the discussion on the ordinance, and if someone wants to offer a motion to table at that time, I'll entertain it. Is there any further concluding comments in the public hearing from the members of the board? Any further concluding comments? Seeing none, that will conclude the second public hearing on the revision to the Parks Ordinance. Next matter before you is discussion and consideration of changes to the Park and Recreation Ordinance as revised by the City Attorney. Discussion. Alderman Walker.
I certainly hear and take under advisement the tabling of this, and I think what we would be looking at if we did that might not hurt us, but I think the key things that we would want to table might be more about how we put together this task force, as opposed to as opposed to the board taking over the park system. So with that said, I'd like to propose, move that we adopt the changes to the Park and Recreation Order as revised by the City Attorney with the following changes. Under Section 2, Purpose, to strike "and" oversight, and now that would read "to provide for a body that will efficiently and effectively guide the development of the park and recreation amenities that are offered to the citizens and residents of the City of Starkville." And I would also like to propose the change under Section 4, Terms, to now read, "The term of each commissioner shall be for 3 years."
Yeah, be recognized.
Hold on 1 second. All right, and Alderman Walker, listen to me because I want to make sure I get it right. The motion from Alderman Walker is to approve the changes to the Park and Recreation Ordinance as revised by the City Attorney with the following amendments. Under Section 2, Purpose, strike the words "and oversight." And oversight. Under Section 2, Purpose, strike the words "and oversight."
And you change "and" from "a" to "a." So it's from an oversight body to a body.
All right. Under Section 2, Purpose, strike the words "and oversight" and insert the word "a." Under Section 4, Terms, strike the language, "The Commissioner shall follow the requirements of state law as applicable under Mississippi Code Section 21-37-33, and replace that language with "Each Commissioner shall be..." The term of each commissioner shall be for 3 years. Is that correct, Alderman Walker?
Yes.
All right, do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Little. Alderman Walker, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No, other than to say I think this is a good move for the city to try to get the parks together, and I would welcome after this vote another motion to get in preparation for our next meeting to look at how we might establish that task force so that when we do come, we're ready to go in terms of what that might entail.
Alderman Perkins.
Yes, sir, Mayor. I'm not against this. Taylor, sit back a minute. Mr. Attorney, let me dialogue with you a minute. Two points of inquiry, just friendly questions here. The gentleman from 4, I believe, asked you a few minutes ago about the number of commissioners, and you gave him a legal opinion that the number of commissioners shall comport with the number of members that's on the commission. So we have, it's set up for 7 commissioners. So tell me how is this consistent with the legal opinion that you gave the gentleman from 4? You say that we have to have the number of terms equal the number of commissioners. So how is this going to comply with state law? Just asking the question. I hadn't read the statute lately on it. So
Sure.
Just tell me. I'm just asking the question.
I think the board would have discretion to limit that term, but I think you do raise a good point. And if that cuts in favor of postponing this a week to let me drill down on that, I'll certainly be happy to do that.
Yeah, and I understand. Again, I'm not trying to cause any problem. I'll make sure we're legally correct. Cause this is. But I want us to proceed wrong, and we got a problem. Cause and then number 2 is, and I hadn't checked this statute out in a while, but when we take up an ordinance, does the complete ordinance has to be reduced to writing? Because I know this, and of course, and I know that the statute says that any member can demand that the ordinance be read by the clerk. So does the ordinance have to be written in its complete form before we vote on it?
I have researched that in the previous term, and if the ordinance is written,
okay,
it suffices.
Okay, that suffices.
And so I believe that the handwriting that we have
okay,
in the amendments would suffice under that.
And I think so too. I concur with that. I just want you to address that. But I just want you to make sure that the board get the right thing. And I'm not against what the gentleman from 4 is doing here, but I want to make sure we don't come up with the terms if it does not comply with the statute now.
And
if you're not for sure about that, you need to tell the board.
Sure, and I was going to put a point on that opinion. I suspect that it would comply, but I have not researched that. So to give a definitive opinion on that, I would need to research that.
Mayor, again, very briefly, and to my colleagues on this table, I'm not against this, but I just make sure that we comply with the law.
What if you put or as otherwise? The statute in there. That way you're covered with the or. You can go 3 years, or you can always default to the statute. Can you take a shot at crafting that? Sure.
I don't think that cures the issue, though, whether, if 3 years aren't allowed, I wouldn't know that.
Well, Mr. Attorney, we just take a recess? You got some codes in there, you got Whistler, you got all this modern research. Can you pull all that up and see?
Without objection, let's take a brief recess.
Yeah.
Any objection, saying none? I'm gonna let you report what you found.
That'd be fine.
Meeting will now come back to order. We'll hear a report from the city attorney on what he has researched in the lobby.
What I did was I looked at any case or AG opinion that would reference the applicable statute 213733 with respect to term limits, and there are not any. So we're left with the express wording of the statute, which says the term of each commissioner shall be for a number of years as there are members of said commission. Section 4 references the code section and locks the city into that before the proposed amendment by Alderman Walker. The thought then in the break was, well, if that gives the city flexibility, the statute allows the city to name commissioners between 3 members and 7 members. So if the city lessened the members of the commissioner members, it would lessen the term. But that rubs against the way Section 3 is written right now, which references commission members from the 7 wards within the city. So having said all that, I think the best thing to do would be to table the matter tonight and let the commission, let these Board of Aldermen decide if they want to limit the number of the commissioners, which would effectuate a term limit, or whether they want to continue with the 7 members, which would lock the commissioners into 7-year terms.
Alderman Walker.
I'd like to withdraw based on the findings that the city attorney just brought up. I'd like to withdraw the motion and table this matter to our recess meeting on the 12th. Is it the 12th?
Motion has been made. Do you want to table it, or do you want to postpone to the 12th? table, you can leave it on, you can take it off. It can never come back. If you want to postpone to a definite time, then it will automatically come up on the 12th.
Well, let's postpone it and make sure it's on the agenda on the 12th.
Motion has been made by Alderman Walker to postpone discussion on the revision of the Parks Ordinance until the recess meeting on February 12, 2015. Alderman Walker, is that your motion?
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Little. Alderman Walker, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Discussion. Any discussion? Any discussion? Discussion, seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes.
Mayor, may I be recognized?
You may.
Mayor, I just would like to be given just a few moments of special privilege as for Alderman comments. And the reason I didn't make these under the comment section of Alderman, because the person I wanted to mention make these comments about has stepped out of the room. Chief, will you come now for just a minute? Chief Mann. Chief, I inadvertently failed to make some comments. Just have a seat there while after you made your announcement. And when we got down to the comment section for the board, you had exited the room, and I felt it in my heart that I need to say that I have really enjoyed working with you. I remember when you came on as interim chief, and then the chief that happened during the 05-09 term under the Kemp administration. And you referenced Mayor Kemp and Ms. Sproul. Of course, that was when she first began as the chief administrative officer. And I must attest publicly and to you that you have had the best interest of the fire department at heart. You have done a very good job. You succeeded Chief Grantham. You worked under his administration and his leadership. And I just want to say to you that you've done a very good job, and we've had a great working relationship. You've brought some good ideas to the city, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to just publicly acknowledge that we certainly appreciate all of your hard work, your efforts, your contribution, and your integrity. And we trust that you will be very successful in all of your endeavors, and thank you for a job well done.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, the next matter on the agenda is the discussion and consideration of entering into a license agreement with the Main Street Association. Alderman Maynard?
Yes, sir. Jennifer, you want to come up as well? The Main Street Association currently operates the community market right down the street here, but it's on private land, and at any time that land could be sold, or the developer could choose to develop that land. And with the success of the market, Main Street was looking for a permanent home for their market, and preferably a city-owned location. Jennifer and I met with Chief Mann and discussed the possibility of using the green space by the fire station there, and she had some landscape architects look at laying out the structure of the market there, and it looks like that would be an ideal location for it. The reason for the MOU and the agreement is that if Main Street has the ability to control the space, it opens up opportunities for additional grant dollars to further enhance that park, and provides them with some additional flexibility to utilize that space in times when the market is not going on. Currently, the market goes 2 days a week, draws over 1,000 attendees on any given Saturday. One of my concerns in talking with Jennifer the first time we met was, how are the vendors, the business owners in that proximity of the park going to feel? Jennifer approached the vendors across the street there, the bank, Renaissance Bank, all the vendors in the George Sherman Park, and they offered letters of support that I've attached some there as well. They welcome the opportunity to have 1,000+ customers in their parking lot on any given Saturday or several hundred on any given Tuesday afternoon. I think with the redevelopment of Russell Street, with additional businesses going in there, with the grant that we have to redevelop Russell Street, the park will serve as a focal point tying that with downtown. So with that, I present this agreement that city attorney has drafted and make a motion to allow the Main Street Association to control the operation, maintenance, and scheduling of the fire station park and moving the community market to that location.
Under the terms of the license agreement?
Yes.
All right, the motion from Alderman Maynard is to approve of allowing the Main Street Association to control the operation, maintenance, and scheduling of Fire Station Park and moving the Starkville Community Market to that location under the terms of the licensing agreement. Alderman Maynard, is that your motion?
It is, yes, sir.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Little. Alderman Maynard, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No, sir.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Alderman Walker.
I just want to say that I think the Fire Station Park, what it's referred to, is an absolutely critical green public space in the downtown area. And I agree with Alderman Maynard in saying as Russell Street and University Drive and hopefully very soon Lampkin Street redevelops, that space is only going to be more important. The one question that I have about this agreement, and City Attorney, can you help me here, is there is language in there that I believe states that if there are going to be improvements to the park, if things are going to be built, if things are going to be planned, what type of oversight does Main Street require to have at that point?
If Main Street attempts to erect any structures or make any physical improvements to the property, that has to be approved by the board. Okay. Otherwise, Main Street would have the sole duty and responsibility of normal landscaping and upkeep of the park.
Okay, so day-to-day maintenance, they're in complete control. If they want to take a fence down or build something, then ultimately they would present a proposal to the board for approval or denial. Correct,
and the landscaping and maintenance has to be done per city approval, meaning if the city's dissatisfied with it, the city can intervene on that issue.
Okay. One other question I have, I think that's great. One other question I have is I know that over the years that park was established by the firefighters in the city of Starkville, and they know where all the, not only where all the, they know where everything's buried out there. And so I think that's going to, as we move forward and Main Street moves forward, I think those folks are going to certainly be a good resource to consider in terms of where the irrigation lines and other things might be. But I'm supportive of this in the sense that I think it gives us an opportunity, like Alderman Maynard said, to potentially go get more grant money. That's what that space needs, is more resources geared toward it. Since it's not officially a part of the park system, it needs more resources that are available to it, and it needs to have program uses to attract even more people. And the other thing I hope is that this in no way, it says in here that events would have to be required for that. My question would be is, at the fire station, there's currently lots of birthday parties and those types of things that happen there. What's the process? And Chief, you might can answer this. I guess it might change here in another month. But the process now, if somebody's wanting to have a birthday party, how would that work on your end, and how might that impact us moving forward?
Well, currently, if they're going to use the park for a birthday party, they just contact us. We'll work. I don't think that's going to be the issue.
Okay, and so my question on that is, I don't think that would require a special events permit. So is that, I mean, I think that's an important function. Not only the park is open space, but also kids are, they want to go see what the fire station, the fire trucks look like. So I'm hoping that we don't lose that dynamic in this transition.
We, as a Main Street Association and the market, have a strong desire for it to still be very much a public park, if not more than it seems like it is right now. Right now, the fences make it feel very closed. Whereas it houses the market very well, we have a broader scope. You know from the charrette process that there's a lot of things that can be done there. And so what we will do is work with the chief to set a process. The only reason we want to control the management of those dates and the birthday parties and things is so that we can know that we don't have a commitment for a market date at the same time as a birthday party is going on, or that something is not erected or planted in the place where one of our vendors sits. And so that's the only reason we want to have some type of channel to kind of clearinghouse, so to speak, for those dates.
Thank you.
Alderman Carter.
One of the foreseeable issues I have with this would be if you're talking about 1,000, 2,000 people coming through, is to go down there and look at the striping. We may have to have some more striping to get, the location couldn't be better. I know you've done the work down there. You're going to have people coming from all 4 directions. You'll have people coming from Cotton District walking. You'll have people walking up Russell. You'll have people, where to park. There's definitely more parking there than there is at the current location. But we may need to just look at some inexpensive striping or something. If you're talking about,
that's in the agreement. Actually,
it is in there too. Okay. Which way does that go at the red light right there in front of?
We actually have plans and tentative commitments from some of the business owners there to help meet the sidewalks that are non-existent right now. And Scott and I have discussed the crosswalks that need to be installed, coming from, I think, the College Park Shopping Center and the heading north-south, and then also across from Bank First into the park to make pedestrian traffic safer, slow down traffic there.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. The next matter that you have before you is discussion of changing the agent of record for the Starkville health insurance policy. Prior to opening the floor for discussion, I am going to make some comments on this matter. I believe it is wholly inappropriate to consider this matter at this time and in this manner. On Friday, I received a call from Tim Cox, who is our current health insurance agent, and he asked me why it had been placed on the agenda to terminate his relationship with the city. I said, well, Mr. Cox, I don't know. This is the first I've heard about this. So I found the alderman who had put the matter on the agenda. I had a discussion with the alderman, and what I told the alderman is what I will tell all of you now, and that is Mr. Cox has represented the city for the last 18 years as the city's insurance agent. That certainly does not entitle Mr. Cox to be the city's health insurance agent forever. And there is a proper manner in which to go about considering changing health insurance agents, and this isn't it. First of all, Mr. Cox negotiated the city's health insurance plan this year. And you are going to take him out of the position of being the city's insurance agent for the remainder of the year, in which he spent months reporting to the chief administrative officer, reporting to me, reporting to the budget committee chair on what the city's health insurance options were for this year. Second, if you wish to look at changing agents, then I would recommend that you ask for proposals in general. You take a look at the market. You certainly don't have to do that, but if you would wish to select vendors to interview about being the city's health insurance agent in the future, that's certainly a very legitimate exercise as well. I would also submit to you that at a minimum, because of his 18-year relationship with the city, Mr. Cox should be given an interview and should be given an opportunity to tell you why he would like to remain your insurance agent. But the worst of all associated with considering this tonight is the fact that after I spoke with that alderman, and that alderman told me that he would agree to hear this matter at a later date and to hear from Mr. Cox and the vendor that the board would like to consider taking on as its health insurance agent. I called Mr. Cox, and I told Mr. Cox that the agenda had been finalized and this matter would not be taken up tonight. So Mr. Cox is not here. Lo and behold, this matter has appeared on the agenda tonight. If you pass this tonight, my next call will be to Mr. Cox to tell him that the board at the table decided to place the matter on the agenda and has terminated its 18-year relationship with him. That is absolutely no way to treat a person in any context. None of you would want to be treated that way, and our city should not treat somebody that way. It is absolutely appropriate and legitimate if you want to consider your options for an insurance agent, but there is a proper time and a proper context to do that in, and this is absolutely not it. Discussion.
Mr. Mayor, may I be recognized?
You may.
I want to be as kind in my comments about this. I welcome Mr. Tim Cox to come at any day before us, because I can assure you I have one interesting question that he will need to answer, and I know that he will not be able to answer it in the manner that you would like to be answered. Having said that, Mayor, Board, I will be bringing forward a motion to change the agent of record for our present insurance coverage. Alderman, if you will have any questions, Ms. Debbie Judon and Mr. Tim Johnson of the Integrity Group are present tonight. My reasons are the following. Presently, the employees are having to pay in order to participate in the Section 125 cafeteria program. Additionally, I have learned that not only would the employees not have to pay, but the City of Starkville would not be charged for the administration of a Section 125 cafeteria plan. That would be at no cost. You want to make sure that the Section 125 cafeteria program is in compliance with the federal regulations and requirements should the City of Starkville be audited by the IRS and the Department of Labor. The employees would be better served if a proactive approach were taken in the delivery of their employee benefits for them to understand what they have and have access to personal claims resolution. As well as there is a need to streamline the benefits so the employees are not bombarded with every product. Mr. Johnson and Ms. Jodon, will you please come forward, please? If you will you introduce yourself to the board?
Certainly. I'm Debbie Judon, and I'm the owner of the Integrity Group that's located here in Starkville. And we are an employee benefits only company.
Thank you. Alderman, do you have any questions for Ms. Judon?
Alderman Walker.
I don't have any questions for you, and not at this time. I think this, I agree with the mayor in the sense that I think this very well may be an option that is worth pursuing for the city. However, since this was not in the packet, there was no information for me to review up till tonight, until it's placed on the agenda. So I can't support this tonight based on that fact alone, that I don't have any information in my packet to let me know what it is exactly that I'm going to be voting on. Call it courtesy, as the mayor said, or looking at a way to treat a person. That's a valid point. The bigger point to me is I don't know what I'm voting on because it wasn't included in my packet. I would much prefer to see this issue tabled until we have all the information presented to us in our packet, so I can ask an informed a question of you. And right now, with you sitting at the table, I can't really, I'm not prepared to ask informed questions on this matter because I haven't been briefed in the packet in terms of what the real changes of this might be. We've had some earlier discussions, but I haven't seen that in writing in terms, so I can look at clear examples of how I might ask an appropriate question.
Alderman Nguyen.
Am I correct, CL, that all of us had appointment times that we could meet with Ms. Jodan and several members of the Colonial Life Insurance Group?
Yes, Alderman,
So-
there were meetings that were held.
So I want to make sure that I understand you. As aldermen, we were given appointment times that we could meet with Ms. Judan and members of the Colonial Life Insurance Program. Am I correct? So
That's
those
correct.
aldermen had, at their discretion, those times that they could have gone if they were interested in that. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Alderman Little?
Yeah, I also participated in those meetings. I appreciate your time. Could you tell us a little bit about, as far as, I know we're self-funded plan and administered by third-party Blue Cross, and you are also the representative of Blue Cross, is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes,
So
and also with your reinsurance company. I represent both.
what sort of impact as far as changing the designated agent?
Well, I actually feel that the Integrity Group is, we're set apart from other agencies in a lot of different ways. We are very, very service-oriented with the employees. It's not just coming in and selling a product to a company or the board. It's carrying on and taking care of your employees. With your cafeteria program, there's no one in this room that hasn't heard of the Affordable Care Act, healthcare reform, and they have passed down requirements now with the cafeteria program that it has to be electronic, and the employees have to be met with. It has to be signed off on every year, but the main thing is it has to be electronic. And the only one that we have seen that's out there is endorsed by the National Council for Mayors, and that's through Colonial with Ameriflex.
Mr. Mayor, may I be recognized?
You may.
I would encourage an alderman to make a motion to go into closed session to determine whether we need to go in executive session.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Little to go into closed session to determine whether there's a need for an executive session. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Little, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No, sir.
Any discussion, any discussion, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. At this time, I will ask the public to vacate the premises so the board. The board opted not to enter into executive session, so discussion will continue on the matter.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I have a motion. I move that we postpone this matter, that being regarding the health insurance policy for the city of Starkville, until February the 17th, 2013. 2015, I'm sorry, 2015.
Motion has been made by Alderman Nguyen to postpone the discussion of changing the agent of record for the Starkville health insurance policy until February 17th, 2015. Alderman Nguyen, is that your motion?
Yes, it is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Perkins. Alderman Nguyen, do you wish to speak on the
I
merits?
do. Please feel free to invite Mr. Tim Cox here for that meeting that night. I have several questions that I would like to ask him regarding our insurance coverage.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. The next matter that you have before you is a request for approval for advanced travel for Buddy Sanders to attend the 2015.
Is that something?
G? No, we put that on consent.
That's on consent.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So moved. Motion has been made by Alderman Maynard to approve of an advanced travel request for Buddy Sanders to attend the 2015 American Planning Association National Conference in Seattle, Washington, with costs not to exceed $2,500 as presented. Alderman Maynard, is that your motion?
Yes, sir.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Maynard, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. The next matter that you have before you is a request for approval of a conditional use for title loans of Mississippi at 316 Highway 12 West. Mr. Sanders, I'll ask you to introduce the matter, and then as this is a conditional use, we will hear from the parties, just to get y'all ready for the opportunity. I will give each side collectively a maximum of 15 minutes. Now, the applicant will have the opportunity to go first, and you can reserve any time you'd like to make a rebuttal. And then I will offer opponents collectively 15 minutes to make any presentation that they may choose. I know the Hendersons are here in opposition. Do we have anybody else that's here in opposition? All right, so we've got 3 in opposition. I'll keep a rolling clock. If any of you go over 8, 9 minutes, I'll just let you know that time is running short. Mr. Sanders.
Yes, sir. Tallahatchie, Mississippi is requesting a conditional use for a small loan store or a car title loan payday advance business to be located at 316 Highway 12 West, which is essentially across the street for the C-Spire location on Highway 12. And in September of this year, my department issued a certificate of occupancy improperly. And when it was made to my attention that a small loan store was going to go into the building located at 316 Highway 12 West, I called the applicant and informed them that unfortunately we had made a mistake, that a conditional use would be required and to come meet with us. And the applicant has done so. We have informed them that they cannot make a title loan or accept a title loan application. They can operate the office as a support office, such as human resource filings, regulatory filings, general support services, but a title loan business cannot be operated there as far as issuing loans or receiving title loan applications. We have corrected the measure by issuing a temporary certificate of occupancy, depending upon if they are granted a conditional use. My staff will change that from a temporary CO to a permanent CO. Are there any questions?
Any questions or comments from the members of the board for Mr. Sanders? Are there any questions or comments from the members of the board for Mr. Sanders? Alderman Maynard.
Currently, zoning does not allow for a title loan.
Title loan stores or small loan stores are allowed in 2 zoning districts in the city of Starkville. In a C2 district as a conditional use, or in a M1 or manufacturing zone as a permitted use. Those are the only 2 zoning districts that allow small loan stores.
This is a
C2.
So it would require a conditional use to operate.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Further questions? Alderman Carver.
So there's been a temporary CO issued on what date? This is recently, in the last week or 2?
January the 28th.
Yeah, really recent. Were they operating before they had a CO?
Yes, but inspections by my staff is not as a title loan business as far as making loans. At least not during when an inspection was made.
When did they start operation?
I got the first call in December. I can't tell you exactly in December, but it was in December. Jeff Lyles of our Code Enforcement Division went and informed the office that they cannot make loans.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further questions or questions and comments from the members of the board?
When did they get the CO?
September.
So they were had already executed leases and things like that?
That's correct. And we received a call about the building being painted a bright yellow color, which is not allowed by our facade ordinance in a C2 zone. And it was at that time I found out that a CO had been issued, and it was at that time that we requested a meeting with the applicant to let them know that as a small loan store they could operate or make loans.
Further questions or comments from the members of the board? Any further questions and comments from the board? All right, seeing none, thank you, Mr. Sanders. We'll now hear from the parties. We'll start with the applicant, and I see the applicant is represented. Mr. Winfield, are you going to be speaking entirely for the parties?
I anticipate that will be the case, although if there may be a question, I have to defer for some assistance. But
would you like to reserve any time for rebuttal?
Yes, sir. Like 5 minutes if I could.
Okay, so we'll keep a clock of 10 for your comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. And I anticipate that I can come in under my allotted time. So, the applicant, as mentioned, is Title Cash of Mississippi LLC, and the property at issue is across from the C Spire location, over where Umi and Lost Pizza and those things are. And as luck would have it, the M zoning is actually across the street. So what we're talking about in terms of a conditional use, at least as a departure into a different area, is basically crossing the street as opposed to going into a significantly new type of area. So basically we've got the length of pavement between us and otherwise being able to operate without a conditional use. Our ordinance talks about 5 factors for a conditional use. The first is land use compatibility. This location is operated as a commercial business in the past, and my research, and I'm subject to being corrected, is that a business named Mo Money Taxes operated at the location, and that a JTB Enterprises operated that location as well. So it's been a location that's had commercial traffic in and out. Although the tax business is a little bit different, it has that customer traffic and things that I think would be similar. The next question is whether the location itself is of a sufficient size and adequate site specifications. Again, it's been used as a commercial business in the past. It's a building about 1,850 square feet. Originally, there's going to be about 2 employees, perhaps would grow to 3, depending on the volume of business over time. So, and I think the staff agreed both with land use compatibility and sufficient size. The third question is whether there's a proper use of mitigative techniques, which I don't believe would be applicable here. Fourth question is whether there's hazardous waste. There would be none. It's an office business. And then the fifth is compliance with applicable laws and ordinances. They've received their city permits, they've received their state permits to operate as a small loan enterprise. There was some confusion along the way. I want to emphasize that once the city alerted them to the issues with the certificates of occupancy, they've done everything they can, and we've worked very hard to comply and to comply with the procedures and to do these things in an orderly way. It hasn't been without expense. It hasn't been without some difficulty, but that has been done. There's a couple of concerns that come up a lot of times with small loan businesses. One of those concerns that you hear sometimes is that we have too many, that there's too many. And I suppose I'm a bit of a free market advocate. If you go back to the days of Adam Smith and the invisible hand and things like that, ultimately I believe that the market will determine what is too many or what is not enough. The other thing that you hear a lot of times is some people just don't like small loan businesses. And that's a fairly passionate debate that people on both sides can speak strongly to. What I'd say though is that that's not the fight that's before us. The small loan businesses are legal in Starkville. Again, this one would be able to operate across the street even without a conditional use. So again, not a significant departure in the question of whether those businesses should be allowed or not is one that's been dealt with. Concerns that have been expressed, and I think rightly so at times, about the appearance of these businesses, and I think this business, once the issue was raised, has been painted very neutral colors. It doesn't stand out. It isn't something that's going to clash. And so all that to say, we're committed to being good neighbors. We're committed to being good citizens. We're committed to doing what the laws of Starkville require. And again, this is a commercial location. It's been used as such, and we would ask your permission and your indulgence in allowing us to conduct business as a title loan to grant the conditional use. Thank you.
Okay. You only used a little over 5 minutes, so you've got 5 in rebuttal. You've actually got a little more than 5 if you'd like to use that in rebuttal. Now, Mr. and Ms. Henderson.
Since I forgot where I was in my statement earlier, I'll start over. I'm Marnita Henderson. I'm in Ward 2, and I would like to address this issue. The property is at 316 Highway 12. My mother's house is at 318 Highway 12, so we're right next door. And I realize the property is zoned commercial, but would prefer it be occupied by a business that doesn't have to have conditional use. I understand this type of business is legal, but would prefer it not be next door to me. I will be selling my mother's property in the very near future. Pardon me. Since my mother died in December. Anyway, so we are quite concerned about whether this will decrease the value of our property. And there have been several, as he said, there are several locations that already have payday loans on Highway 12. And I personally don't think any more is needed, but I'm not borrowing money, so that doesn't really apply. In your staff report, it says that there were 25 families were notified, or 25 people were notified within 300 feet of this property. And then by the development office, it says they received no phone calls. No, they didn't, may not have received any phone calls. I'm not sure about that, but I do know that I went. I had a letter the very next day I went to, and they told me that it was not open. And first of all, I went to see Mr. Sanders. He was not here, so I saw Mr. Harvell. They told me that it was not open. I pulled out my phone and showed them where it says title loans open on that had been for approximately 2 to 2.5 months. I had seen the activity in and out because I'm in and out of that house every day. I spoke with them and they said, well, if they're open, it will be closed tomorrow, so that Jeff Lyle will go down today. A week later, they were still open with a sign that says open. So I called back and they said, well, there have been some issues and therefore we've had to take a little longer about getting this done. I did not hear from anyone else until January 13th when I came to the Planning and Zoning meeting. At that time I spoke to the Planning and Zoning and I was found out that it had been issued a certificate of occupancy even though it was not supposed to have been, and so therefore that's why they said they could not close it. After talking with a couple of the aldermen and CAO, Mr. Adams, and then speaking with Mr. Sanders at the next board meeting, there was a great decrease in the traffic to this building after this time. After the January 13th Planning and Zoning, they did take out the open sign and they cut off the title loan sign. It's still in the window, but it was cut off. And but I just want them to know that the staff report said that in the packet said that no one had said anything. I definitely have been there several times. And thank you, and I would appreciate if you deny this request.
Thank you, Ms. Henderson. Any further citizens wishing to speak in opposition to proposed? Alderman Sister.
I have big news, big news. My beloved Bulldogs beat Tennessee 71-66. So there's that. Don't count that time against me there. we have as a community hashed through the idea of title loans, payday lending agencies, that sort of thing. And the decision that was made, and that y'all have not chosen to change in any way, is to restrict their use by permit to specific areas, M1 zoning, and to allow conditional uses in C2. I've heard Mr. Winfield say that this was just across the street from an area where it would be permitted. That's true of any border between two zoning differences, and it's a critical difference, or it wouldn't be there. I don't want to rehash what's good or bad or helpful or not helpful about these businesses, but I do want to ask y'all to consider carefully whether this business deserves a conditional use. As Ms. Henderson has alluded, they're not off to the best of starts by not making it through the process properly, but that's being remedied. The question becomes, have they incurred any damages if you deny them a conditional use? There have been lease payments, so perhaps that would be considered a damage. You're not denying them the right to do business here in town. They can go elsewhere and do business here in town. You have land maps, land usage charts that are readily available to both the business and the landlord. If they were doing their due diligence before entering into an agreement, they would have known that they needed to come and seek this conditional use. And I think one of the most important things is not just the potential damages, and there may be some, but I think they're also shared with the landlord who leased this to a group that he should have known was not permitted by right to do business there. But so that's one question. That's a question for you and your attorney to assess. But the other question is, how much of a precedent are you setting by allowing somebody to do business without going through all of the proper permitting, without going through the proper permitting process? What sort of precedent do you set? Ms. Henderson owns property. If she opened a business that is not in compliance with our code and that was clearly objectionable, and when I've used this example somewhat facetiously, but if she opened a strip club there, she's got electricity, she's got power, she's got everything, she's got a space, all that sort of thing. Would you come back and deny her the right to do that? It's against the rules, but she might not have known that. Does it damage our community to have that business there? I'm asking y'all to weigh the damages that an individual business would have by having to relocate, and that's really all that would be asked, was that they would be relocating, against the impact on our community. And I too am asking y'all to deny this conditional use. Again, you're not saying that they can't do business here. They don't have to go home. They just got to get up out of there. So, y'all, please deny their request.
May I ask Alderman Sistrunk a question?
You may.
Alderman Sistrunk, I know we discussed this matter at length during the
Yes.
09 through 13 term.
Yes.
And it's clearly established that these check cashing facilities had been in certain areas. M1's permitted use, or C2.
Right.
And matter of fact, we put a moratorium on that 404 time limit.
We did.
And so that was a strong public policy at this time, and I certainly concur with you. I think we need to keep that public policy in place.
And I agree wholeheartedly, Alderman Perkins. I don't think we're saying that they can't do business here.
They should go to a certain location to do
Correct.
it. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Are there any further comments in opposition to the proposed rezoning or conditional use? All right, seeing none, Mr. Winfield.
May I say one more thing then, since there's, okay.
Quickly.
Okay, very quick. I do want you to know that there's residential to the west side of it, the next house. There are two houses that are residential. The house directly behind my mother's is residential. The house behind this piece of property is residential. And all the way up the street behind it is residential. So people do still live in these houses.
Mr. Winfield.
Thank you. the one thing, a couple of things that I would like to address. First of all, with respect to the process, I want to be clear that this business went through the process in good faith. It didn't just open up a strip club or a business. It actually had a certificate of occupancy as a check cashing facility, issued erroneously as it turns out, but it was trying its absolute best to comply with the laws and was acting in good faith when it did so. The other thing is that there is significant expense. They have a 2-year lease at this property, and you know, as a guy who's got a lease on a property downtown himself that he has to make payments on every month, I know that to be significant. In some months it's even more significant than others, and it's especially significant on those months when I'm not doing business, and that's where we've been the past few months. We're committed to being good neighbors. This has been a commercial location. Again, we're not talking about a strip club. We're not talking about a major sea change. We're talking about a place where Mo Money Taxes did business. We're talking about a place where vacuum cleaners were sold. We're talking about a place that you can stand on the front door and see a liquor station, a liquor store, a gas station, buy beer and get a tattoo. So it's a place that is commercial, and we would note that this is a commercial use that's accepted within the city of Starkville. The issue as respects a conditional use in terms of the public policy, what I'd suggest to you is that the fact that it was provided for as a conditional use meant that there was not to be an ironclad law against having title loans in C2. If there were, it would have said ILM and that would have been it. We'd have said stick to manufacturing and industrial and you can't go anywhere else. But that's not what this city elected to do. What it elected to do was allow it in those areas and in C2 with a conditional use. And what I'd suggest to you is if there's ever a place that a conditional use is appropriate, an area like this that's right across the street from the ILM that's in this buffer zone is exactly the right place that it should be. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Winfield. All right, that will conclude the public comments on the proposed conditional use, and we'll move into discussion from the members of the board. Alderman Carter.
The only question I've got, sounds like it's commercial, completely surrounded by residential, then one across the road. How did that happen? Did it get grandfathered in, or is this?
I don't know. Mr. Sanders, do you have any information regarding the history of the zoning map in that area?
I do not. I can tell you that the majority, if not almost all, of Highway 12 is either zone C2 general commercial or M1 industrial, and typically along a major corridor. It's not unusual in the state of Mississippi for a C2 zoning district to be located along the entire length of the corridor.
The two residential to the side of those are rental properties, aren't they?
You mean
are they
to the
single
north?
family? The next two houses to the east, are those rental units? They are? Okay, thank you. Just to get in the history.
Well, there's something I should tell the board. There is a difference between zoning and land use.
Yes, sir.
The homes that are occupied as residences were probably in existence before it was a C2 zone, or it has changed over the years. Oftentimes you will find residential houses along a commercial corridor that is now zone C2 as the city grows. So just because something is zoned C2 or commercial, oftentimes there are residential uses in that zoning district.
Thank you.
And now might be a good time for the city attorney to review the test for conditional use because it is a little different than the test you use for rezoning.
The test starts with the burden of proof, and the applicant bears the burden of proof, and that burden of proof is by a preponderance of the evidence, which is 50% plus 1, or you could substitute the phrase more likely than not. In other words, is it more likely than not that the applicant met the factors that Mr. Winfield spoke to? Those factors do appear on the 3rd page of the staff report for your reference. In this case, like most cases, turn on the first factor, and the first factor is land use compatibility. And our ordinance spells out a more precise test for land use compatibility. And that test is, does the site, in your mind, in your discretion, adequately accommodate the proposed use without generating adverse impacts on adjacent land use. And again, the board has very, very wide discretion under conditional use zoning.
Will you repeat that one more time? Is it more than likely
Yeah,
to be compatible without affecting the?
Is it more likely than not, as presented by the applicant, that the site and the proposed business adequately accommodates the proposed use without generating adverse impacts on adjacent land use?
What
So
is
will
that?
it be harmonious, or will it negatively impact adverse land use, or adjoining land use?
An adverse impact could be anything under the sun.
That's where you have to use your own framework to come up with that definition. That's not defined in the case law.
Further discussion? You have no motion pending.
I have a question.
All right.
Mr. Sanders, the fact that this certificate was issued in error, have there been policies or procedures put in place in your office so that this does not happen again?
Yes, sir. My staff has been informed before any certificate of occupancy has been signed off on, or any business license is signed off on, come through by either myself or the city planner.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Alderman Wynn.
I have a go ahead.
Mr. Winfield, upon executing the lease agreement on the property in question, were they made aware of anyone at that point? How did we get to the CO? Did they tell them when they came in what type of businesses they were opening up, or?
Yes, sir. Being the certificate of occupancy actually reflects the fact that it would be a title loan or a small loan business.
Did they come down prior to that? At what point did they notify the city we're opening this business? Tell me a little bit about the process they went through. Did they go in, had they already executed the lease, and then, or did they come down after they?
The license was obtained before the lease. After they obtained the license, they executed the lease.
License, which came from the city?
Yeah, so they were acting in reliance on that when they entered into the lease.
Further discussion. Alderman Wynn, did you
I
have
have
something?
a motion I'd like to make.
All right.
Move to deny conditional use for title loans of Mississippi at 316 Highway 12 West.
Motion has been made by Alderman Wynn to deny a request for conditional use for title loans of Mississippi at 316 Highway 12 West as recommended by as presented. You comfortable with that? All right.
Or just
Well, the P and Z recommendation is to approve, so I
Right,
didn't
just
want to be
motion to
confusing.
deny, right.
All right, motion has been made to deny a conditional use requested for title loans of Mississippi at 316 Highway 12 West. Alderman Wynn, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Carver. Alderman Wynn, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No, I do not.
Discussion. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, please answer yea, nay, or abstain as the city clerk calls your name.
Alderman Carver.
Yay.
Alderman Wynn.
Yay.
Alderman Little.
Yay.
Alderman Walker.
Yay.
Alderman Maynard.
Yay.
Vice Mayor Perkins.
Yay.
By a vote of 6 in favor with 0 against, this measure passes. The next matter that you have on your agenda is a request for approval to allow Mississippi State University's landscape architecture design build class to place a sculpture at the intersection of University Drive and South Montgomery Street. Mr. Sanders.
Yes, sir. Students at the Mississippi State University Landscape Architecture Design and Build class are proposing to put a sculpture at the southwest corner of South Montgomery and University Drive as part of a class project. The students are proposing to place a sculpture with the letters that spell out "Read." The letters will be 3 feet and I believe 6 inches in height and 4 feet in width. The students have gone before the library and county board of trustees for approval, and on January the 27th of last month, the board recommended the placement of the sculpture on library property.
Discussion. Alderman Walker.
So, Mr. Sanders, based on what I've read, that looking at this, it's been approved, the library board thinks it would be a good idea to have a piece of public art that they're not having to pay for or essentially maintain. The city's not paying for this. It was from a grant.
That is correct. Also, the students have met with staff. We have given them advice. We've told them essentially, to check to make sure the letters will not, or the sculpture will not be placed in an easement. We also discouraged any type of backlit lighting so that no one can damage the sign, that it's more permanent, using more other materials such as steel. So they have gone through the process that the city has requested of them.
Mr. Mayor, may I be recognized?
You may.
Mr. Sanders, did your staff do any evaluation on whether the D in Reed adversely affected or tickled any kind of sight triangle or viewing?
Yes, we have met with the students at site, and we are satisfied with the site plan.
Please don't mess with the site.
May I be recognized?
You may.
What other materials are going to be used?
It's my understanding steel and wood.
Will there be additional lighting placed to eliminate the sculpture at night?
That I do not know, but if so, we did, the issue did come up. We did not want any type of backlit lighting, and that, and we stated that if they were to eliminate the sign, it would be essentially external.
I would say that we also have the professor of record and the student who's largely, this is work, who's waited patiently since 5:30. And if we would like to ask them a question concerning what they proposed, I think they would certainly be open to answering those questions.
I throw that question to you then. Do you foresee the sign being illuminated at night in any way?
For in the future, we do not have the grant money to be able to do that right now, but possibly in the future doing that.
Mayor, may I recognize?
You may.
Mr. Sanders, certainly want to support anything that promotes the overall betterment of our community. Are you aware of any other community in the Golden Triangle area or anywhere in the state of Mississippi that has any similar type of structure like this or sculpture
Well,
like
it's
this?
it's typical for a community to have community art projects. For example, when I was at Auburn, as part of a community art project and also fundraiser, we had Tigers Unlimited, in which businesses could purchase a tiger and paint it with their logos.
I don't think you understood my question. My question specifically is, and I wasn't interested in Auburn, but thank you. My question is, are you aware of any city or town or community in the state of Mississippi that has this type of structure? And I'm not speaking against it, I just want to know the answer to the question. Are you aware of any city in the state of Mississippi or in the Golden Triangle area, of course, that has this type of a layout? That's all I'm asking.
The city of Hattiesburg has a swan that is placed throughout the city with various types of designs.
And I just asked that just so I know for information purposes. I'm not speaking against it. I just try to get more information, that's all.
And there's sculptures in various parks. I can't give you a specific example.
Very good. Thank you.
It's not uncommon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Alderman Carter.
I think it's cool. I mean, looking at it, look at y'all's designs, I think I approve it. The only thing I would say is issues any kind of graffiti or things like that have happened when you get, I know Alderman Walker's ward had some graffitis. If something's installed, you might have the bad people of the world to do it with. If y'all could come back, you know, if we can make sure y'all are the ones that, in a timely manner, come back and touch it up. I know you say every 7 to 10 years is only maintenance, but if there's any other maintenance, you know, that you could help us out with as a city. But other than that, I thought looking at it, I think it's cool. I think it's going to draw attention. I think sometimes a couple family members have been here and they ask where the library is. I don't think if they ever see that, they'll never have to ask again where the library is at. It's going to be, yeah, it's going to be the identifying mark for the library. I mean, if you tell somebody, hey, you know where it says read, that's the library. I mean, it's going to be one of those. It's going to kind of, you know, set that corner in. So, other than the maintenance issues, I know that's my biggest concern. Long term, if something happens to it, if something chips off of it, I think it's a basically a wood structure. I don't know how that is going to hold up over 10 years. So.
As far as the maintenance, I teach the design build class every spring semester. We also did all the work at the Heritage Museum for the last few years, which actually just won a national award today from architecture colleagues. As far as maintenance, if there's a graffiti issue, we can jump in through that process and help to repair. It will be a durable material. It's also be set back off of the sidewalk a few feet, so it's not going to be right on the sidewalk. But you know, things may happen, and we will try to help however we can. Students come and go every year, so they can't get their commitment. But as long as we have the class and we can do that through that process, we'll be happy to help. Like we do at the museum, we come back and help every time if needed to help with maintenance issues. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I be recognized?
You may.
I move approval.
Motion has been made by Alderman Maynard to approve of allowing Mississippi State University's landscape architecture design build class to place a sculpture at the intersection of University Drive and South Montgomery Street as presented. Alderman Maynard, is that your motion?
Yes, sir.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Maynard, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. Thank you, Mr. Sanders. Thank you, gentlemen. The next matter on the agenda is a request for approval of the claims docket.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Nguyen to approve of the City of Starkville claims docket for all departments, including the Starkville Electric Department, as of January 30th, 2015, for fiscal year ending September 30th, 2015, as presented. Alderman Nguyen, is that your motion?
Yes, it is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Maynard. Alderman Nguyen, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No, I do not.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
Nay.
By a vote of 5 in favor with 1 against, this measure passes. That concludes your open session portion of the agenda. A motion to go into closed session to determine whether there's a need for an executive session is in order. Motion has been made by Alderman Little to go into closed session. No, we got 4.
We got 4.
Go into closed session to determine whether there's a need for an executive session. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Perkins. Alderman Little, do you wish to speak on the merits?
I do not.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Saying none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. Ask the public to vacate the room.
I'm sorry, I got you. I thought